It just spray in here?
I disinfected it. I'm so sorry. Is it too strong? I'm checking everyone out.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to defer to you and let you call the committee to order.
Okay, we will open up the meeting with prayer by Pastor Smith.
Father, we thank you for this day. Thank you for this committee. God, we ask for your grace and your wisdom and prudence and direction. And we thank you, we praise you, God, for a fruitful meeting. God, that we can honor and glorify you and edify one another. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. First thing on the agenda is the approval of the last minute for the last meeting. Everybody read it?
I was just about to finish it up.
If everybody have looked at the last minute, do I have a motion to approve it?
I'll make a motion that we approve it.
Motion second.
Have a motion second that the minute be approved as stated. Are you ready for vote? All in favor, show of hand. All opposed, same. Okay, the first thing on the agenda is the criminal statistics.
Mr. Chairman, last meeting we spent some time going over potential topics. One of the issues that was raised as a concern by Mr. Grubb, involves some crime statistics, and to forego speculation, I just invited the chief to come and make some presentations on, kind of what things are looking like here in Thomaston. Before I defer to the chief, Mr. Grubb has resigned his position from the board. Council district, which appointed him, is aware, and I would anticipate that shortly we should have another member to join us. So without that, Chief, do you want to kind of share?
If you don't mind, I'm going to
Yeah, go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are y'all? Good afternoon. I know most of you, but if you don't, I'm Chief Richardson. Good afternoon. Some of you I keep an eye on regular basis. These two right here. Anyway, so it was brought to my attention that some comments were made about the crime stats in Thomaston, and that one of the comments made was that we have a 58% crime rate. And I guess my understanding is that was asked where that number came from, and it said that they Googled it. So I Googled that. And the number one thing that pops up is called Neighborhood Watch, and it's a private-owned website where they produce crime stats. Well, the only official crime stats that are out there anywhere are the GBI crime stats and the FBI crime stats. That's where we report our official stats to those two agencies. The number that was reported, 58% crime rate, was a current 2021 crime rate. Well, the most recent crime data that's provided and out there of actual numbers only goes through 2019. There are no 2020 or 2021 crime stats that are public record to anyone because they're always a year or two behind on posting those statistical data. So what those companies do is they forecast. They basically just enter old data and then they put whatever formula it is that they use and make a forecast saying that this is the current crime rate. because on that one, the same site where it said a 58% crime rate, when you looked at reporting data, like for homicides and robberies and all that, it said unreported. There was no reported information. Those are just merely projections that were made by this company. So I wanted to bring to you guys some real figures or just information about real crime stats in Thomaston, so you know. So what we report to the GBI and FBI is what we call Part 1 crimes and Part 2 crimes. Part 1 crimes are your more serious criminal offenses. Part 1 crimes are, I'll read the list to you of what Part 1 crimes are. Part 1 crimes are homicides, rape, robbery, aggravated assaults, burglaries, larceny auto, which is basically like entering auto if you break in a car. Larceny other, which is just thefts. Vehicle theft and arson. Those are your main crimes that are reported as Part 1 crimes, which is the main information that's tracked nationwide by all agencies. And really, those are the crimes that gauge if you really have crime, bad crime in your community or not. Then you have Part 2 crimes, and it's a long assortment of fraud, just stolen property, vandalism, prostitution, narcotics, gambling, DUI, liquor laws, disorderly conduct. There are felony cases in there, charges, but a lot of it's just misdemeanor stuff, but it's just a variety of everything else other than those major crimes. So the only data that we have in-house current is through 2020. We have all of our data. We report it a year at a time. So in a year-to-year comparison, so you know where we are in Thomaston, I have the statistical data for 2019 as compared to 2020. So from 19 to 20, our Part 1 crime is down 19%. It has decreased. It is down for Thomaston. I can give you a brief example of some of those numbers. Our homicide rate for 2020 was up 300%. And that's because in 2019 we had 0 homicides, and in 2020 we had 3, which were all isolated incidents which we have made arrests in all of those cases. But that's just an example. Our rate in 2019, we had 2 reported rapes in the entire city. In 2020, we had 1, so that's down 50%. So that's kind of an example of numbers. The biggest one on here that's a good example is larceny other, which would just be your general thefts. In 2019, I'm sorry, like entering autos, larceny auto. We had 66 reported entering autos. In 2020, we had 42, so that was a 36% drop in entering auto crimes. So when you take all of the categories in Part 1 crimes, which are your major crimes, we were down 19.47% for the city of Thomaston. So our crime rate is not up, it was down from year to year. And just, the year prior to that, 18-19, it was down 7.58%. So we've been on a downward trend for the last 3 years for his crime, Part 1 crimes. Now our Part 2 crime for the 19-20 year was up 15%, which is all those other smaller categories that I was talking about. And the biggest area that made our number go up was just general vandalism. We only had 7 reports of vandalism in 2019. We had 48 reports in 2020. That's the bit. That was a 585% increase, which really blew that number up because the rest of the numbers are fairly in line. And a lot of that is we had an extensive amount of vandalism at the city parks. Kids going in, tearing up things, tearing up the cameras, just doing stuff at the parks. Was a lot of them. And I can say in a lot of those cases, most of those cases, we've made arrests in most of those cases. But that's the point. But now the Part 2 crimes for the previous year was down 22%. So we're still at a lower level than what we have been. So the report that crime is 58% in Thomaston and all that is really a skewed statistic and stat that's coming from not a very valid resource. This crime data is pulled directly from our computer system on actual crimes in Thomaston. And then, and again, like I said, for his actual reportable data, you can only get crime stats through 2019 through the FBI. So these other sites that say the current crime rate is this are all just forecasting, and making projections. So that's pretty much it. I just wanted to come share this information with you, so no one's going around thinking that Thomaston's just a crime-ridden city. We do have our issues. We do have crime, like every city. Our call volume is up. We have a lot more calls than we typically do. And I think that that's a lot to do with COVID era that we're living in. But overall, our Part 1 crimes, which are the crimes that we are generally most concerned about, we're down 19% from 19 to 20. And we hope to show that same trend next year. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions, comments? Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. Thank you. And I'm always open. Anyone can call me, talk to me. I know Greg comes and sees me every once in a while. But you're welcome to call me, talk to me, ask questions about stuff. And Reverend Gill and I have had a lot of conversations in the past too. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we want to thank Chief Richardson for coming to the committee and giving us a splendid report. And we are glad that we live in Thomaston and not Macon or Columbus or Atlanta. So we should be very proud of our police force. And we thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If you don't mind, I'm going to excuse myself. Thank you.
Okay, next thing is on the agenda is the REE document review. Do you want to?
At the previous meeting, we submitted to the committee was a copy of the state statute regarding monuments, and then there was also a copy of a legal brief which was produced by our city attorney and forwarded to the city council for their review to give the committee better context of kind of the considerations that the elected body was considering during and one of the reasons for the commission of this committee. So we wanted to give you the opportunity to review that and have opportunity to ask questions for clarifications so that we can have further discussions and figure out how to move forward with the issues surrounding the institute.
Yeah, I have, I guess, a lot of questions. It was difficult, I guess, since I'm not an attorney, difficult to read it and really understand it. But from what I gathered, it didn't appear that that there was, from a legal standpoint, that there was very much that we could actually do, and that's why I need some clarity. Where I know there's a state law, but in other localities, things are being done. So I haven't heard of anybody, being charged with a crime or being indicted or going to jail. So obviously there must be some things that we can do, but I need some guidance as to,
So we looked at that, and a lot of it is based on the specifics of the case. When you speak of other locales, I think we looked at Athens, we looked at Augusta, we looked at McDonough. And the way the state statute reads, my understanding is that you can remove one if you're going to place it in a place of equal prominence, which I know Rome did, or if there is a perceived public safety issue with regard to it, you can remove it. And I think both of those were parallel in a lot of the cases that we looked at. We couldn't find any instances where a memorial was removed from public property that was not either slated to be located in a place of equal prominence or taken down because of a public safety issue. And those exceptions are in the law. Yes, sir?
I look at this and I see where there's city council, they could change they could rebrand it for the betterment of the community if they wish to.
Rebrand it, you mean?
I don't like to say my thought on it is not a race issue, because race is always gonna be here, as long as we're here. But it's the way the outside look at us, and like I say, and it is hurting our employment. And when business get ready to come, somebody gonna say no, we're gonna rebrand it. And since 1970. When we named our schools after R.E. Lee and Griffin, Griffin named Griffin High, and it was a community thing. But our population been going down since 1970. We were like 74%, and 80 we've been minus 3.4%. 1990, we minus 5.7. 2000, we was a positive 3.1. At 2010, we was minus 216. And the 2019 census is putting it down as 4.6%. And some way and somehow, we have to turn that around to encourage our young peoples to come in to, in the 70s, babies. I heard Reverend Smith said that we don't have anybody that age, but the 70 babies who graduated from R.E. Lee, middle class and went to college, they hadn't come back to Douglas County. They went to other county, look at Griffin. Most of them in Griffin, where Griffin got a 5A school and a 4A school. And here we are, a big old county, and we just got a 3A school. But we got to start producing our own, encourage our own to be here to produce jobs. And since then, we lost like minority jobs. Since 1970, we lost 3 restaurants, 2 grocery stores, 2 snack bars, 1 filling station, 1 furniture store, a movie theater. And not only in the minority community, but in Silvertown, East Thomaston, all those. But we have to some way encourage our young people. Somebody told me the other day that I didn't know they was this committed. And they said we are getting together to bring our young people back. And this is a good way to do it if we could rebrand our community, And that's what I'm looking at. And in this opinion, it do say that the city council have the authority to do that.
Can you show that to us so we can read it together?
With that,
What you just said, can you show it to us so we can all read it together?
so
You just made a statement that it was in the opinion.
Oh,
So I
oh,
said,
oh,
can
yeah.
you show it to
Oh,
us
yeah.
so we all can
Okay.
read it together?
the opinion say
Would you tell us the page so we can all
Page,
go through it together? Thank you.
page up on number 2 on the second page.
Did you read it?
It says, since the R.E. building was designated as part of the historic district, does the city council have the authority to remove the letter R.E. from the building, the portrait, and the auditorium curtain without submitting an application? And if you turn over the next page, the third paragraph, it said, therefore, the city is not required to obtain a certificate of appropriate, but it would be required to give the HPC 45 days notice before the procedure. It said, however, the city council have authority on the order to make change within the historic district without application to HPC, and any purpose change to remove items
Any proposed?
any proposed change to remove all of that related to the Confederate State of America, or the military office are protected under law, and the state law must be considered.
So it didn't say what you just said.
All right, so let me contextualize that for you. When the city council was considering the issue, there were 2 issues in play. One's a local issue, 2 is a state issue. So the local issue is that this complex was designated as a historic district, right? And under the state statute that governs, and even the city of Thomaston Code of Ordinances, if you own a building within the historic district, we have one downtown, we have one for this complex, before you can make a material change in appearance, if you're going to change the facade, if you're going to hang a new sign, you have to obtain from the Historic Preservation Commission, which is an appointed body just like you by the city council, you have to get a certificate of appropriateness. So if you want to make a modification to a downtown business, you bring me an architectural rendering of what you want to do. I present that to the Historic Preservation Committee. They in turn evaluate it, and if it's historically significant, they will give me a certificate of appropriateness. I then turn that over to the building official, and he will stroke me a building permit to do my work. The part of the statute that you're referring to is government-owned buildings do not have to achieve a certificate of appropriateness. So in a sense, you're right. The city council could make any modifications they want within this district without having to go through the Historic Preservation Commission. The only thing they have to do is give them a 45-day notice of their intent. That doesn't circumvent the state law or the state statute that went into effect in 2019. So we're not bound by the local Historic Preservation Commission, but we're still bound by the state statute.
What you're saying, even though the economy is being hurt, it's nothing that the city council can do about it.
Well, that's the circumstance of the decision and the deliberation that we're trying to determine. You know, is there something to do? You know, part of what the council has to consider, and you know, Mr. Doug's on the city council and he can weigh in, is that if you have an opinion, right, which is bound or tied to a particular statute, if that opinion is that it cannot change, do you willfully act counter to that opinion? And if you do, what are the ramifications?
I have a
Yes,
question. What, is it just one building, the gym, that is part of this?
No, it's the gym, the Drake, this, I believe the church.
Is the Houston gym a part of this too?
I believe so.
I
I
guess-
actually have a map, and I can provide that to the group, when the council enacted the ordinance. I can provide, and it's got a survey of all the buildings that are in the historic district.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify, there's two pieces in the opinion, right? Because there's the local HPC piece, which is tied to certificate of appropriateness, and then there's the state statute portion. So the opinion's really based on those two nuances.
And then, one thing I would say is remember that there are two, if you ever wanted to take the name off, there's two that you gotta convince the county commission too, because we're in this together. And really, as you know, there was a lot of reaction against that last year. And when the opinion was rendered about the state law, there was councilmen that just said, we're not willing to even consider what was, to the best of their understanding, breaking a law that had been put there by the state. So, and that was a real, don't you agree, Russell? That was a real difficulty for them. You know, of course, they may have had opinions personally that how they felt about the thing, but in the end, there was when our attorney said, you know, how do you see this? That state law would say we're going to protect these symbols and these names. When you looked at this building here, they were not willing to do what they felt like was to go against state law. That wouldn't be good. And you know, I can tell you, James, they'll probably
Heavy rain has been detected near your location.
I think they would argue as to what is that a cause for the reason young people don't come back to Thomaston? They would probably argue that there are a host of reasons for it, and job opportunity and that type of thing. But it's a complicated issue. But that state law was a big issue with them.
You know, the people create their own job. Most of the middle class people, they create their own job. And like you say, what I think we should do, what is more important to maintain what we have, or do something to stop a dying economy. Cause we're hurt. We need to try to attract people back. And with that, you know, it's kind of painful.
Is there like a balancing act, for instance, when you consider already name on the building, can you add anything to the historic site? For instance, like you have a statue or monument to a Confederate soldier. Can you add another monument to like a Union soldier, or to someone, to another historical, something to balance it out? Because right now, R. Lee was a traitor. He tried to overthrow the government. Now, there was two sides to that story. One, the Union Army who was fighting for the freedom of the slaves, right? And the other one was trying to keep people in bondage, enslaved, and fighting for the economy so they can prosper economically also. But my thing is the proper context of the name. Can you add, like, if you're not taking the name down, can you add a plaque or something, like put the truth out there, what it's really all about?
Yeah, and there was part of what, you know, one of the potential solutions for issues like this, in which you find they're really difficult issues where there's emotions on both sides. One of the potential solutions was Michael Thurman was on public radio in June of last year talking about these issues, and Michael Thurman is a real history student, and one of the things that he suggested is under the term contextualization, in which, you know, you might put a sign or put something out there that explains the context in which these names came about. Other solutions could be, if you feel like a group of citizens is not fairly represented in things, you could say we wish there was a statue to, you know, someone who might represent the other side of the argument. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Union soldier. It could be somebody like Martin Luther King,
John Lewis, or somebody like that,
who played a significant part, who might be represented by people who were impacted by parts of history. And so, you know, I don't think there's anything in the state law that prevents you from putting something else there, but I think the attorneys, correct me if I'm wrong, Russell, but the attorney's feeling was, and I think it was backed up by the Attorney General, was that these symbols are protected. And so while you can't take them down unless you put them in a site of equal prominence, it doesn't say that you can't put a sign or some kind of historical monument that discusses the context of how these things came about, or just discusses the other things. So, and I think that's a possible way in which somebody could move if they felt like, or we feel like there are people that are not fairly represented in the way certain things are.
I just think the truth needs to be, you know, told on both sides. You know, the issue to kind of educate people what these symbols and these names really represent.
Now, when you say equal prominence, what other areas would
Well, our situation is a little bit unique in that prominence tied to a building. How can you equalize prominence since it is the original building? Most of the times when we see circumstances or cases where it's been debated, you're talking about statues or monument that might be in a public square, and they move it from a public square to another area of the city or a park that may be equally as frequented. I don't know how you would get around it when it's the actual name of a particular building. And to my knowledge, there's no case law on the issue. And this particular circumstance, I don't know that it's happened, or if it has, it hadn't been widely debated. I know it says equal prominence, and I think it specifically states that it can't go into a museum, and
Right.
it can't go into a cemetery unless it was originally erected in a cemetery.
What about Generation Park? I mean, that monument, Upson County moves their monument that way. They'll move their history that way. I'm not about this decaying history. I'm not about this decaying history. But like you say, we could do something and put it where that would be a great park where people could come and with track tourism. You know,
That's
people
it.
become
That's
that.
That's a park for
Excuse
everybody.
me. Let me talk.
I
Please.
apologize, sir.
Thank you, sir. But like you say, you know, but like I say, everybody got a voice in it. We can put everything there, but it's kind of hard for you to ask somebody to come to Thomaston to live when they got to go pay their light bill in our RLE building.
And it has to stay within that county. It can't move to another county like
That's good.
Andersonville, or it has, if you move it from the courthouse here in Upson County, does it have to remain?
Don't know.
So there's no precedent so far as what we dealing with.
Do not think so. I think they would go back to the intent. You know, what was the intent of the law? And maybe you can, I don't know.
Gotcha.
I think one thing about Greatest Generation Park, I think since the inception, it was to recognize the greatest generation, the war front and the home front of basically World War II, and the Thomaston Mills was the focus of it. So I just tossed that out to you as to what the intent and purpose for it. And I know the High Towers originally, if I would kind of put probably $1 million towards it, but it was to recognize the home front and the war front during World War II, that greatest generation group of people.
Any more discussion?
She's thinking.
I feel this way. I was not here when we had the Confederate, all the wars and stuff like that. And, you know, when they say R.E. Lee High School, I never thought about the person R.E. Lee. That didn't, you know, I'm not from here.
Yeah.
But I've been here over 50 years. And I never thought about that's, you know, people don't like it. I just don't understand. It's a name. He was, and I'm sure names of other people have monuments and things like this. But I wasn't around then. I didn't have anything to do with slavery. I didn't have anything to do with this. And we seem to want to blame people now. And don't blame me. I didn't have anything to do with it. But I honestly do not think that the people that went to R.E. Lee, when you said the name R.E. Lee, they thought of the Confederacy. I think it's a name. Now, if you want to go in history and look it all up, that's fine. And you want to study it, that's fine. But that's my thoughts on it.
I went to Arley, and it was a different time, and you knew who Robert Lee was. It was present in the actions of people. So I grew up in that era, and I knew it wasn't just the name, it was how people acted, and, you know, toward people of color. So
You went to RLE during a time where you probably faced a lot of discrimination.
yeah, I was young, but I was on when the city first started busing. I was caught up in that group when it first started busing in the regular schools. I graduated in '79.
I was in it in 1970, and when it really came together. But I don't think the issue named RLE. I think it's the decay of history. And I think more people was upset because the minority history got decayed. And like you say, and that's called a confrontation. Now when you talk about RLE High School, I mean, I was there from the beginning. Everybody went there. Everybody had a good time. They had championship football team. And if you ask anybody that was in the 80s and the 70s, they ask you a question, what you talking about? I mean, what are you talking about? We were together. But like you say, it's about decaying history. I mean, like you say, in RLE gave the city a branding. You know, like I say, who you going to educate? It's all about education. But it's more in the people's mind. I agree with you. It's more in the people's mind than what is going on with the name. And my mind be different from yours.
Yeah, we have a fight for that.
Right.
We do. I hate to say, but I must be the oldest one here. Did you go to RLE and
I was at RLE in 1969.
you graduated in '69?
I graduated in 71.
I'm a year older than you.
And I think the trick bag that we're in is that the people who have the voice and could change it feel offended.
Right.
Because we're walking in a fence regardless of race, creed, or color, and we're voicing this to people who feel a certain way about the name or really didn't look at the name that way, who can actually change or stand with us. But I don't think our approach is to offend anybody or to point the finger or say somebody's racist because they have a certain view regarding the name or regarding the Confederate flag. But it's something that we have to face and come to together in order to make a change so that everybody can feel as if they're on the same page. The name has history, it has a connotation with trauma towards the minorities, and for the minorities to speak out, we can't come off as if it's you that's actually put that name there, because like you said, you wasn't even around when the name was put up there. So we're not saying that you're racist, or we're not saying that you don't care. But we need to hear, someone needs to hear the voice of the other side to see whether or not, okay, this is offensive to them. Let us stand with them to make a change. It may be moving, may be rebranding, it may be defacing, but there needs to be a consideration towards those who are offended by it, because that's not our approach, is to offend anybody in the city or the county of Upson. But there is a concern in the community, and we got to find a way to do it.
And like I say, everybody's on the same page. We love our town. We love Thompson. We love Upson. We want it to grow. We want it to grow. We're not producing millionaires anymore, because like I said, we don't have the economy, and the only way we're gonna attain that is to what? Do something. I mean, whatever it is. I have an idea. All of us got different minds and different concepts. But whatever concept it is, some way we got to come together.
So let's talk about our options, moving forward. And I kind of couched it up at the last meeting, and I'll give you another illustration, kind of, where I see things. So we've already discussed properties deeded to two entities, right? The City of Thomaston and the Upson County Board of Commissioners. It's a 50-50 ownership state. We're 50% of that. We still have another 50%, which is the county commission. Two, it's either a violation of state law or it's not, right? So you have to make a decision on that. If it's a not, even if the city council were to participate or in a petition, you'd still have to go before the Board of Commissioners. If you err on the side of it is in violation of the state statute, then you're left with the decision of taking an action that is in direct conflict with state law, and you're willing to accept the ramifications, or you recognize that's not a legal action at this time. So when we look at all that in the mixed up puzzle, what I think I heard from the city council, and Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, is we're going to err on the side of our legal counsel that to move the name would be in violation and conflict with state law. So we can't necessarily move it. We can contextualize it, which is what you brought up, or we can move. In the event we move, we still have a property that's deeded to the City of Thomaston, so there's still taxpayer funds required to upkeep the facility. So what did we really change? So I'm looking to y'all for additional options. I'm just trying to walk through my head. Is that kind of where you think we are?
Yeah. And again, I guess it was my statements in one of the council meetings that brought this thing up in front of everybody. And in the end, we knew it would be an issue with the city and the county because we jointly own the building. So we asked the city attorney to render an opinion as to how it was affected by that state law, because they quickly brought up, it became a heated issue, and they brought up that you can't do this because there's state law against it. The attorney rendered her opinion and also went to the attorney general and seemed to back up the fact, at least in the opinion of our attorney, and it was kind of backed up by the attorney general that you can't, that this name on this building and these symbols are protected. So, at the time I was kind of hoping that it would be a simpler matter and that you could put it over in these symbols in the archives, but it's not that simple, and there's that law. And there was, so the thought really moved more in a direction of contextualization. Like, is there some room, is there in some way to speak for the people that were affected by the fact of the Civil War and that type of thing? And certainly know that the thoughts were represented that, gosh, this building with that name over it, that, and I certainly understand what you say about the fact that we didn't have anything to do with it, but it was the prominent name of a cause that was fought, basically, over slavery. You can say states' rights and those things, but felt like, do we want the minority who is most affected by that name, maybe, to do we want them to have to come in a building where they come to a judge or come to pay their fees or to seek their hopes and dreams? We want that name up there. Well, it seems to be protected. So, as Russell says, so the question is, do we want to bring up the issue of moving out of here, which could be a very costly issue? Or is there a thought that you could do something, the issue of contextualization, and that's where Michael Thurman's talk, you know, there are people that can help with that if you want that. There are people that can help with that issue of how do you contextualize if you put a monument or a marker out there to discuss what's going on. But in the end, it's a difficult question. It comes down to, do you want to go against the law, or do you want to seek to move out? And that's a costly proposition. And where would you go in that type of thing?
Well, could you add another prominent name to the building?
I don't know why you could. I just think you can't remove it or conceal it.
Okay, there's already a name back there. If you put that name already on this building, with that bill, Drake and Ari Lee, you might have answered that. But my point is this. I hear you saying that it's gonna cost you to change location. It's a bigger cost to stay here and stop the growth of the community.
I think when you look at the growth, population demographics, not only in rural Georgia, but rural America, I think it's a much more complex paradigm than the particular issue of Ari Lee. I think rural, since people moved out of farming in the 1950s, rural America has slowly seen population decline. Not to minimize the point, but I think it's a much more complex issue when you talk about population demographics.
But you look at Spalding County, you look at Pike. When the census come out, Pike gonna catch up to the county. And Griffin is 59% growth, and we're all in the same percentage.
Right, but a lot of that's going to be, proximity to Atlanta. It doesn't have anything to do with branding. I'm not saying we're not.
I'm listening.
But that's a very complex situation. We all want, Upson and Thomaston to grow and be successful and have plenty of jobs. That's just a complex. I don't want it to look at it from a myopic standpoint. But if we rebrand, all of a sudden we change. There's a whole bunch of factors that go into population shifts. Hopefully, when the census data comes out, maybe we won't be on the decline. I don't think that was wood.
Go back to Ms. McCoy. Her point. I know it's a long shot thing, but if you could put George W. Drake and General Ari Lee, you think that would release some of the tension?
That's a question for you all. You're kind of appointed as that liaison between the general public and the elected body. Does that get everybody home? What do y'all think?
No. So long, it's just gonna be a long name. It's gonna be a lot of letters on there. But I think the Lee has so much significance. I mean, it's been around for a while. It's been assembled for many different things, to many different people. For it to still see that, I don't see it. But I know that there may be, it may be a compromise that others may come to, but I don't see it.
Don't George W. Drake name been around a long time too. You just hadn't read about it. You just hadn't been in the history book. I mean, like that name, it hadn't been back since 1870, but it was in 1800 that his name, because he was the first superintendent of the County Negro school system. And like I said, that's a great name. But like you said, some names we downplay. I mean, in our community, what we're trying to do is bring us together and not divide us. Any more comments? Where we need to go from here? We'll go down.
No, I'm just, what are the gyms being used for? Are they being the same upkeep as the regular building here? What are they used for?
One of them needs to be tore down. It looks pretty bad shape. I think there's storage in the other one.
So you can't tear down the gym, like, because it's a part of this historical.
Well, that gets back to, yes, the government entity we can do whatever we want in the historic district. We just have to provide HPC for 45 days notice.
And they can't give us a certificate of appropriateness.
We don't have to obtain one. So we're looking for a common path forward, and we're looking for, amicable solutions.
I think what you want to do is to try to represent both sides and try to say, how do we come up with a solution that helps us move forward, together, and that represents, that represents both sides in this thought. And that's a tough thing, because it certainly last year became a very emotional issue. And so the question is, how do you do that? And how do you do it in a way that both people feel that their thoughts and the hopes and dreams of the future and their concerns are recognized?
The other counties that you mentioned that did remove them, was that prior to 2019 or that was?
No, we were talking about some of the exemptions within the state law, right? So I know Athens did one, they moved one. They did it because of a road project, and it has to be located in a place of equal prominence, right?
Gotcha.
There was a couple other ones
My
we
God.
looked at. One got moved up in Rome. It was the same type deal. They went from cemetery to park. There's been a couple that have been removed. Yeah, that judges have actually signed off on because of public safety issues. And that's one of the reasons that they can be taken up. Our specific issue with the actual structure name, I haven't found anything on that.
Yeah, they hadn't been quite one that really represents the name actually appearing on the government building that represents all the people of the town. It was more of a monument in the city that people had felt that they were offended by or whatever, and then they sought to move it. But ours, it's almost unique. I won't say it's unique. There are other places in the country where there's a similar situation, but we didn't see any in Georgia.
Like you say, whatever decision that the city council come up with, decaying history. I mean, I don't care what side it's on, is not good. Getting rid of history. But we need to just come together and find a middle road where the minority and majority both be represented.
I think the city council wants a recommendation from the committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the issue was it did come up in city council, and it got into some difficulty there. And so the thought was, well, maybe a way forward into this would be to form a committee and let that committee be made up that we felt represented the public, and maybe they could suggest something that the city council would consider.
Do we have a recommendation?
No, I think we need to table this and so we can kind of digest, what we've done today, and maybe by the next meeting, maybe we could actually have something to propose.
Is there any information or resource that I could make available to you at the next meeting? Documents, questions, people?
Can we just, if we need that,
Sure,
can we just
absolutely.
we'll call you? I can't think of anything right away.
Can I get a motion table?
I'll offer the motion.
Second.
Having motion and second that we table the already document to the next meeting. Is there any question, any discussion? No discussion? Are you ready to vote? Go out, raise your hand. Everybody in favor? Motion approved.
Do I have any other business, Mr. Chairman?
Is there anything else we need to put on the agenda for next week?
I'd like y'all to think about litter and homelessness.
Do you have any material on the statistic of literacy?
No, but we could do a riding tour.
Okay.
Oh, you know where the spots are, huh?
It just seems like there's been an uptick in litter this particular year. We've been struggling with it. Even the amount of debris that we're taking off to the landfill from the trash companies, 20% higher than it's been in years past. And we're seeing it on the roadways, and it's a challenge. And the specific, topic on homelessness, some of it is homelessness, but I think a lot of it's rooted in mental health type issues and substance abuse. But it's an issue at some point we're going to have to address, and this might as well be a good place to start.
Literacy is something that people have to buy into. Just like
They said littering, not literacy. Littering. Did you understand? You said literacy, that's why I'm asking. Sorry.
Yeah, I was talking about trash.
trash then, okay?
Trash.
Oh, the trash.
Said littering.
Trash.
Yes, sir.
This board is all us professionals. Like you say, we need to respect each one of us, and when somebody talking, let us not interrupt.
Yes, sir.
Because we are all us grown. Thank you. But back to trash.
Even if we were children, we still should respect each other. I apologize, sir.
Right.
Thank you.
Back to that trash. People need to buy into it. I mean, like in my community, when a letter was sent out that you put the trash cans out on the middle of on the street, everybody in the community bought into it, and to make it better for the people that picks up trash to come by and get it. And like I said, it's some way that we need to establish a policy where people can buy into it, because it is a problem. Any more discussion?
Can I ask something?
Yes, ma'am.
I've been hearing about some homeless people having tents over at your side, behind some of those doors on the right-hand side, and they live in tents. Is that true?
We've had them from time to time. We've had them build temporary structures behind some of the businesses on the north side. And it's a sad situation where there's not
Yes,
a
it
complete
is.
answer that's perfect. So we're trying to figure it out.
Yeah. I heard there are also over on our street, right in that field, there are a lot of people there too.
We're aware.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's anything we could do to help these people.
Those are some of the things we're exploring.
just wanted to make sure it's true.
I would say sometimes, you know, Sheila, that we always think that it's the city that's responsible for doing some of those things. Sometimes I wish that, you know, well, number one, you gotta define the problem, and you gotta determine how much of a problem. One thing the police chief said at the Kiwanis meeting is that we tend to think there are lots of homeless people, but some of those people are more mentally ill people that you see walking the streets, and they have a home to live in. And I know of two that I've seen in the last week. I know for a fact they have a home. Well, if you see them on the street, you would swear, you would believe that they cannot have a home the way they look, but they do. And that they just choose to dress and look the way they, you know, and maybe not do as much, you know, have the personal hygiene, say that somebody who has all their facilities or whatever. But so the first thing you'd have to do is define the problem and how much of a problem it is. And then it would be my hope that, you know, there would be the possibility that churches in the town could help to a great extent, you know. And it's, again, as Russell said, it's a difficult problem, and you got to define it and say, well, what's possible.
Well, I just heard this. I hadn't seen anything, but I had just heard this, and I wanted to make sure. You know, I think the churches could probably do something. I know they serve breakfast and things like that to these people, and I think that's good, but to find them shelter is going to be kind of difficult, isn't it?
We not only serve breakfast in churches to homeless people, but to many people who are just living at such a level of poverty that they just can't hardly feed themselves. And
I know our church does a lot for that.
Then like, you gonna sponsor a trip, get a trip together for us to make a tour?
Sure.
Any more discussion? Can I get a motion that meeting be adjourned?
I make a motion we adjourn.
If the motion second that the minutes is adjourned, all in favor by show of hand.
All right, so thank you.
I apologize, sir. I thought you didn't understand what you said.
Thank you so much.
I don't know what I said.